I found the photograph on a Tuesday, not tucked away in some drawer or hidden in her phone. No, Riley left it right there on the kitchen counter, face up beside her coffee mug like a piece of junk mail she'd forgotten to throw away. A Polaroid. Who even uses Polaroids anymore? But there it was, my wife pressed against some guy in a suit, her hand on his chest, both of them laughing at something hilarious I'd apparently never been funny enough to inspire. The date stamp in the corner read 3 weeks ago. I stood there holding my thermos, staring at this thing, and I didn't feel what you'd expect. No rage, no tears, just this cold, clear thought. So that's how it is. The kitchen smelled like her perfume, that expensive Chanel stuff she'd started wearing about 6 months back. Said it made her feel confident. I'd wondered at the time who she needed to feel confident for. Now I knew. The coffee in her mug was still steaming. She'd been here minutes ago, maybe less. Left this photograph out like it was nothing. Like 7 years of marriage could be summarized in a single Polaroid and discarded just as easily. I picked it up, studied it closer. They were at some restaurant. Upscale, judging by the decor visible in the background. His hand was on her waist. Her smile was genuine. The kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in at least a year. Maybe longer. "You're still here?" Riley breezed into the kitchen, already dressed for work in one of those power suits that cost more than my truck payment. She grabbed her coffee without looking at me. "I thought you left at 6. "Project got delayed," I said. My voice sounded normal, steady. Strange how you can sound calm when everything inside you is recalculating. "Found this." I held up the photograph. She glanced at it and something flickered across her face. Not guilt, more like irritation, the way you'd look at a parking ticket, like this was an inconvenience, not a confession. "Oh, that." "Yeah, that." Riley sighed, setting down her mug with a sharp clink against the granite countertop I'd installed myself last summer. She'd picked out the pattern, said it reminded her of beaches in Greece, places she wanted to visit. I'd worked overtime for 3 months to afford it. "Look, Marcus, I was going to talk to you about this. Just not before coffee." "Who is he?" "His name is David Brennan. He's a real estate developer." She said it with this little lift in her voice, like she was introducing me to someone at a cocktail party. Pride, almost. "We met at that conference in Dallas, the one you said was just networking bullshit." I remembered that conference. 3 months ago. She'd been gone for 4 days, came back energized in a way I hadn't seen in years, talked about connections she'd made, opportunities opening up. I'd been happy for her. Stupid. "So you're sleeping with him?" "I'm seeing him." She crossed her arms, defensive now. "There's a difference." The fluorescent light hummed above us. Outside, a garbage truck groaned down the street, hydraulics wheezing as it lifted bins and dumped them. Normal Tuesday morning sounds. Everything normal except the woman I'd been married to for 7 years was standing there telling me she'd upgraded. "How long?" "Does it matter?" "Yeah, Riley. It actually does." She looked at her watch, a Cartier I'd saved 4 months to buy her last Christmas. Skipped lunches, brought coffee from home, canceled my gym membership. All to see her face light up when she opened that little red box. She'd cried, said it was the most thoughtful gift anyone had ever given her. She was wearing it to tell me about her affair. 2 months? Maybe 3? I don't know. Time kind of blurs when you're actually living instead of just existing. That one landed. I felt it hit somewhere behind my ribs, a dull ache that spread outward. "So this is my fault." I didn't say that. She picked up her coffee again, took a sip. Casual, like we were discussing the weather. "You're a good guy, Marcus. You really are. But you're, I don't know, safe, predictable. You come home, you watch your engineering documentaries, you go to bed at 10. David takes me places. He's building things that matter. Real things. I build things. You design highway drainage systems. She said it like I cleaned sewers with my bare hands, like my work was something embarrassing she'd been tolerating. When was the last time you did something exciting, something that made me feel alive? I could have listed things. The weekend trip to Fredericksburg where we'd stayed at that bed and breakfast she'd loved, the cooking class I'd signed us up for, French cuisine, her favorite, that expensive restaurant downtown, Uchi, where I'd surprised her for our anniversary, even though it took 2 months of saving. The way her eyes had sparkled over the omakase, how she'd held my hand across the table. But standing there, looking at her face, at the impatience and barely concealed contempt, I realized none of it had ever been enough. Maybe nothing ever would be. "So what now?" I asked. "I want a divorce." She said it simply, like ordering coffee. No hesitation. She'd practiced this. "I've already talked to a lawyer. We'll split everything 50-50, and we can both move on. You'll be fine, Marcus. You'll find someone who appreciates your stability." The way she said stability made it sound like a disease, like being reliable was a character flaw. "And you'll what? Ride off into the sunset with David?" "Maybe." She smiled, and it was the first real emotion I'd seen from her all morning, genuine happiness. "He's taking me to Cabo next weekend. First class, 5-star resort. He knows how to treat a woman. Unlike you." She didn't say it, but it hung there in the air between us. She grabbed her purse, Prada, another gift from me, and keys, checked her reflection in the microwave door, smoothed her hair, adjusted her collar, making sure she looked perfect for David probably. "I'll probably stay at his place tonight," she said, heading for the door. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you want it. Oh, and I'm meeting with the realtor Thursday to get the house appraised, just so you know." She was already selling our home, already dismantling everything we'd built. The door closed. Her BMW, the one we'd bought together 2 years ago, the one I'd co-signed for, purred to life in the driveway. Then silence. I stood in the kitchen we'd renovated together, holding a photograph of my wife with another man, and something inside me went very quiet and very cold. I looked down at the Polaroid still in my hand. David Brennan, real estate developer, first-class tickets to Cabo, 5-star resorts, someone who knew how to treat a woman. I set my thermos on the counter and pulled out my phone. It took me 15 minutes to find everything I needed about David Brennan. Social media made it almost too easy. His LinkedIn profile practically wrote itself. University of Texas grad, MBA from McCombs, owner of Brennan Development Group, currently working on that new mixed-use project downtown. The one that had been all over the local news because half the neighborhood was fighting it. The one the city council had approved despite public opposition. His Instagram was public. Lots of photos at expensive restaurants, charity galas, standing next to people in suits at ribbon-cutting ceremonies. He had that look, tall, fit, expensive haircut, the kind of teeth that cost 10 grand to perfect. Everything about him screamed success. And there, 4 posts down, was Riley in a black dress at some fundraiser, tucked under his arm like a trophy. She was wearing the diamond earrings I'd given her for our 5th anniversary. The comments made me sick. "Power couple," someone wrote. "Y'all are so cute together." A dozen heart emojis. Riley had liked every single comment. Posted 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. Not 2 months. Not 3. 6 weeks ago, she was already parading around with him publicly while coming home to me every night, kissing me goodbye every morning, letting me believe we were fine. I kept scrolling. David had an ex-wife, scattered mentions in older posts, always carefully cropped out of recent photos. A teenage daughter from that marriage who went to St. Andrews, the expensive private school on the west side. He drove a Tesla Model S and a vintage Porsche 911. He belonged to the country club. He had opinions about wine that he shared liberally in his posts. He was everything I wasn't. Everything Riley had apparently been missing in her life. I sat at the kitchen table until my coffee went cold, thinking about that photograph, about the way Riley had looked at me this morning like I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle between her and her new exciting life, about David Brennan's smile in that Polaroid. My phone buzzed. Text from my project manager. "Where are you? Miller's asking about the drainage calcs." I called in sick. First time in 3 years. Then I opened my laptop and started planning. People think revenge is about anger, about doing something stupid in the heat of the moment. They're wrong. Real revenge is about patience, about collecting information like evidence, building your case brick by brick until the structure is solid enough to withstand scrutiny. I'd spent 10 years as a civil engineer. I knew how to build things that lasted. I spent that first week watching. Riley had stopped pretending months ago, I realized. The late meetings that ran until 10, 11 at night. The weekend conferences in cities she'd never mentioned before. The new lingerie in her drawer that I'd assumed was for me, but she'd never actually worn around me. The way she'd started going to the gym 6 days a week, coming home glowing and energized. All of it suddenly made sense. She hadn't been working late. She'd been with him. She came home Wednesday night at 11. I was on the couch with my laptop, surrounded by documents and notes. "Don't wait up for me anymore," she said, kicking off her heels. "It's just depressing." Noted. She looked at me, maybe expecting a fight. When I just went back to my computer, she shrugged and headed upstairs. I heard the shower run for 20 minutes. Heard her humming, actually humming while she got ready for bed. Happy. Content. I listened to her get into bed, scroll through her phone for 20 minutes, texting him probably, before the light clicked off. Then I went back to work. David Brennan's company was leveraged to its teeth. Public records showed 3 major loans from different banks, all with balloon payments coming due in the next 18 months. The downtown project was behind schedule. I'd found the building permits, seen the delays, read the complaints filed with the city about noise, safety concerns, traffic impact. He was hemorrhaging money trying to keep everything afloat while maintaining his lifestyle. The Tesla lease, the Porsche insurance, the country club membership, the condo in that expensive high-rise downtown. The man was built on debt and image, a house of cards balanced precariously on borrowed money and borrowed time, which meant he was vulnerable. Thursday night, Riley didn't come home at all. She texted at 7, "Staying at David's. Don't wait up," like I was her roommate instead of her husband. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to the construction site for Brennan's downtown project. It was easy to spot, 12 stories of unfinished concrete and steel, wrapped in orange safety netting, dominating an entire block that used to be a bunch of small local businesses. The kind of development that looked impressive in renderings but pissed off everyone who actually lived in the neighborhood. Security was minimal. A chain-link fence with a padlock, a few "no trespassing" signs. One security camera pointed at the main entrance, but it was just for show. The mounting bracket was rusted, the lens cracked. Nobody had checked it in months. I didn't go in, just sat in my truck across the street, watching, making notes, taking photos. At 8:30, a white Tesla pulled up. David Brennan got out, talking on his phone, gesturing at the building like he was closing some deal. He looked exactly like his photos, tall, probably 6'2", good suit, hair that probably cost $100 to cut. Mid-40s but maintaining it well. The kind of guy who had a personal trainer and a dermatologist. He looked exactly like the kind of guy Riley would want. He stood there for 10 minutes, still on the phone, pointing at different parts of the building. Angry, from his body language. Whoever he was talking to wasn't telling him what he wanted to hear. Good. I took photos, logged the time, made notes about what I observed. Then I drove home to the house that used to be ours and started building my case. Friday, Riley came back to grab more clothes. I was in my office, the spare bedroom she'd always complained about me taking over with my books and files and engineering manuals. "We need to talk about the house," she said from the doorway, not coming in. She hadn't come into my office in over a year. Okay. David thinks we should list it soon. Market's good right now. We could probably get 50,000 over asking. David thinks. Don't start, Marcus. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, defensive. This doesn't have to be ugly. We can be adults about this. I swiveled my chair to face her, really looked at her. She'd changed her hair, highlighted, probably cost $300. New makeup, more dramatic than she used to wear. She looked good, expensive, like someone trying very hard to be somebody else. You're sleeping with someone else, planning to sell our house, and I'm supposed to be adult about it. I told you I want a divorce. What did you expect? That I'd just keep living here pretending everything's fine? Maybe a conversation before you started redecorating your entire life. She laughed. Actually laughed, sharp and bitter. You want to talk about conversation? When's the last time we had a real conversation, Marcus? When's the last time you asked me about my day, my dreams, anything that mattered to me? Last Tuesday, you told me about your presentation at work, the one with the Henderson account. You said your boss complimented your slides and you thought you might get the promotion. That stopped her. For just a second, something flickered across her face. Uncertainty. Maybe even shame. That was 3 weeks ago, she said, but her voice was quieter now. It was last Tuesday. You had the salmon salad at lunch from that place on 5th Street. Said it was overpriced, but good. Your boss, Catherine, complimented your slides on the demographics breakdown. You were wearing your blue suit. The one you said made you feel powerful. She stared at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Not guilt, fear. Just a flash of it, like she'd suddenly realized she'd underestimated something. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she said, recovering. You keep score. You remember everything like it's ammunition, like you're building a case. It's exhausting, Marcus. I remember because I care. No, Marcus. You remember because you're trying to win. That's all this has ever been to you. Some equation to solve, some project to complete. I'm not a project. She grabbed a suitcase from the closet, started throwing clothes into it. Angry now. Quick, jerky movements. I'll be back Monday for the rest of my stuff. Maybe you should stay somewhere else. Make this easier on both of us. David's lawyer will send over the paperwork next week. Can't wait. She paused at the door, looked back at me. Her expression was strange. Sad, maybe. Or just tired. You know what your problem is. You think being right is the same as being happy. It's not. And that's why you're going to end up alone. The door slammed. Her BMW roared out of the driveway, tires squealing on the asphalt. I sat there in my office, surrounded by my monitors and notes and photographs, and I smiled. She was wrong about one thing. I wasn't trying to win. I was going to destroy them both. Monday morning, I went back to work. Showed up at 6 like always, coffee in hand, ready to review drainage calculations for the Miller project. My coworker, Travis, looked surprised to see me. Thought you died, he said. You never take sick days. Food poisoning, bad sushi. I'm good now. You look like hell. Thanks, Travis. Really appreciate that. He wasn't wrong. I hadn't slept much over the weekend. Too busy working on my own project. One that wouldn't show up on any company timesheet or billing records. I'd spent Saturday night at a bar 3 blocks from David's condo. 6th Street, one of those trendy places with exposed brick and craft cocktails that cost $18. Not doing anything suspicious, just sitting at the bar, nursing a beer, watching. David showed up at 9:30 with Riley and another couple. Loud entrance, lots of laughing, the kind of people who wanted everyone to notice them. Riley wore a dress I'd never seen before. Red, low-cut, the kind that cost serious money. She looked happy, radiant even. They ordered expensive scotch. Macallan 18, I heard David tell the bartender. Showing off, making sure everyone knew he could afford it. They left at 11, stumbling slightly. Riley was giggling, hanging on David's arm. the picture of a woman having the time of her life. I waited 20 minutes after they left, paid my tab, and drove home. Sunday, I visited my buddy Kyle. We'd gone to Texas A&M together, both engineers, both married young, both convinced we'd figured out life. Except Kyle's wife had left him 2 years ago for her CrossFit trainer, a walking stereotype that would have been funny if it hadn't destroyed him. He'd spent the last 24 months rebuilding himself into someone I barely recognized, colder, harder, more careful. "You look like shit," he said, handing me a beer on his back porch. His house was small but meticulous. No clutter, no photos, nothing that suggested anyone but him had ever lived there. "So I've heard." We sat in silence for a minute. That was one thing I appreciated about Kyle. He didn't fill empty space with useless words. "Riley's leaving me," I said finally. "I'm sorry, man." "Don't be. She's doing me a favor, apparently. Freeing me from my boring, predictable life." Kyle took a long drink. "There's someone else?" "Yeah. Real estate developer. Guy named David Brennan. You know him?" "I know of him. Brennan Development Group. Built those overpriced condos by the lake that nobody can afford. Vertical living for vertical people or whatever bullshit slogan he used." He shook his head. "Worked with him on a project 2 years ago. Stormwater management system for one of his developments. And he's a dick. Fought every safety regulation, cut every corner he could, tried to bribe the inspector when the guy flagged some issues. Nearly got the whole project shut down. We had to threaten legal action before he'd comply with basic code. Sounds like a winner. Guy cares about exactly 2 things, money and looking good. Everything else is negotiable." Kyle studied me. "You thinking about doing something stupid?" "Definitely not. Marcus." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I know that look. That's your, I'm about to over-engineer something look. I've seen it before. Usually right before you spend 6 months obsessing over a problem. I'm just gathering information. Due diligence. Due diligence is what got me a restraining order and 6 months of anger management classes. Learn from my mistakes. Your mistakes involved spray painting cheater on her car in 3-foot letters and setting up a website with photos documenting her affair. Yeah, well, I was working through some things." He finished his beer. "Point is, whatever you're thinking, it's not worth it. She wants out? Let her go. Move on. Find someone better, someone who appreciates what you bring to the table." That's very mature advice. "Which you're going to ignore completely." "Probably." He sighed, cracked another beer. "Just be smart about it, whatever you do. Don't leave evidence. Don't do anything you can't walk away from." I promised I would be smart. Tuesday, I made my first real move. David's development company had a public comment period coming up, city council meeting about the downtown project. There'd been neighborhood opposition from the start, people worried about traffic congestion and noise pollution, and property values dropping. Local businesses that had been displaced. Residents who'd lived there for decades, suddenly surrounded by construction. But David had money and lawyers, and in Austin, money plus lawyers usually won. The city council had approved the project 6 months ago despite the protests, unless someone gave the opposition ammunition. I'd spent Sunday night after leaving Kyle's place digging through public records. Everything was online if you knew where to look. Building permits, environmental impact studies, safety inspections, traffic analysis. The project had passed everything, technically, but there were inconsistencies, little things. A drainage assessment that didn't quite match the site plans, flow calculations off by 15%, load-bearing calculations that seemed optimistic, probably correct, but right at the edge of acceptable tolerances. Concrete testing dates that overlapped in impossible ways, same testing company supposedly inspecting 3 different parts of the project simultaneously. Nothing illegal, just questionable. The kind of thing that happens when you rush permits and cut corners and grease the right palms. I made copies, highlighted the discrepancies in yellow, typed up a nice, anonymous summary. Professional, detailed, technical enough to sound credible, explaining why concerned citizens might want to look closer at these particular documents. Suggested specific questions they should ask the city council. Then I mailed it to every member of the neighborhood association fighting the project. 12 different addresses, certified mail, so I knew they'd received it. 2 days later, the local news picked it up. Questions are being raised tonight about the safety and environmental impact of a major downtown development project. Critics say building permits contain irregularities that warrant further investigation. The developer, Brennan Development Group, has denied any wrongdoing. I watched it on my laptop while eating leftover Chinese food in my empty house. Riley still hadn't come back for the rest of her stuff. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Marcus Chen? A woman's voice. Professional. Crisp. Speaking. This is Jennifer Walsh from Walsh & Associates. I'm the attorney representing your wife in your divorce proceedings. That was fast. Mrs. Chen would like to move forward as quickly and amicably as possible. I'm calling to schedule a time for you to come in and discuss the terms of your separation. Terms? Yes. Division of assets, property settlement, that sort of thing. The sooner we can reach an agreement, the less expensive this will be for everyone involved. I'm sure Riley has it all figured out. A pause. I could hear papers rustling. Mr. Chen, I understand this is a difficult time, but cooperation will make the process much smoother for everyone involved. I'll cooperate. Send me the paperwork. I'll read it over and get back to you. We'd really prefer to meet in person. Discuss things face to face. It's much more productive than... Send me the paperwork, Ms. Walsh. I'll read it, consult with my own attorney, and get back to you with my response. You're retaining counsel? Should I not be? Another pause, longer this time. That's certainly your right, but it will significantly increase the cost and duration of these proceedings. Then I guess Riley should have thought about that before she started planning our divorce while I thought we were still married. I hung up. 3 minutes later, Riley called. I let it ring twice before answering. Are you serious right now? No hello. Just anger. Pure, undiluted rage. About what? About being difficult. Jennifer said you wouldn't schedule a meeting, that you're getting a lawyer. I said I'd look at the paperwork. That's not being difficult. That's being smart. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Marcus. You can't just make this easy. You have to turn everything into a battle. I'm sorry. Am I supposed to just roll over? Sign whatever you put in front of me? Give you everything you want because you decided you're bored? It's not about being bored. God, do you even listen? I'm unhappy. I've been unhappy for years, and all you care about is winning some imaginary competition. You're unhappy, so you cheated on me. That's the sequence of events here, right? I didn't cheat. You've been sleeping with him for 2 months while still married to me. That's literally the definition of cheating, Riley. Silence. Then, this is why I want out. This constant judgment. This need to be right all the time. Do you know how exhausting it is? Do you know how exhausting it is to be married to someone who's constantly disappointed, who treats everything you do like it's not enough? Because it wasn't enough. That's the whole point. So this is my fault. Yes, no, I don't know. She sounded tired suddenly, defeated. Can we not do this? Can we both get lawyers and split everything and move on? I think that's exactly what we should do. Fine. Fine. She hung up. I poured another beer and went back to my research. David Brennan's downtown project wasn't his only problem. I'd found 3 other developments in various stages of completion, all running over budget, all facing delays. A mixed-use complex in Round Rock, stalled for 8 months. A luxury apartment building in Pflugerville, only 60% leased 2 years after completion. A shopping center renovation in Cedar Park, embroiled in lawsuits with the previous owners. The man was juggling chainsaws while pretending he had everything under control. posting glossy photos on Instagram while his empire crumbled beneath him. And now, thanks to those anonymous documents, the city council was taking a closer look at his flagship project, scheduling hearings, asking questions, giving the neighborhood opposition legitimacy. I didn't have to destroy him, I just had to help him destroy himself. The city council delayed David's project for 30 days, pending additional review. I read about it in the Austin Chronicle on Thursday morning while sitting in my truck outside his office building downtown. The article quoted him extensively. This is a politically motivated delay designed to appease a vocal minority. Our project meets or exceeds all safety and environmental standards. We've been fully transparent with the city, and we're confident that any additional review will only confirm what we've known all along. This development will be a tremendous asset to downtown Austin. The words sounded confident. The photo accompanying the article showed something else. David standing in front of his half-finished building, jaw tight, eyes hard. A man under pressure. Technically, everything he said was true. His permits were legitimate. The project did meet minimum standards. But perception mattered more than truth in his world. And right now, the perception was that David Brennan cut corners and bulldozed through community concerns. I watched him leave the building at 6:15. He was on his phone, pacing in the parking garage near his Tesla, gesturing angrily at nothing. Even from 50 yards away through my truck windshield, I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept rubbing his forehead like he had a headache. Good. Riley hadn't contacted me in 5 days. Her lawyer had sent over preliminary paperwork. 53 pages of legal language that basically said she wanted half of everything and wanted it yesterday. The house, the savings account, my 401k. Even my truck was on the list, though she'd never driven it once in 7 years. I didn't sign anything. Instead, I hired my own lawyer, Frank Morrison, recommended by Kyle with the warning, he's expensive, but he's mean. You want mean right now. Frank's office was in one of those restored houses near campus. Hardwood floors, leather furniture, walls covered in diplomas and bar certifications. He was 60, maybe 65, with gray hair and the kind of face that had seen every dirty divorce trick twice. Your wife's asking for a lot, Frank said, reviewing Riley's paperwork across his massive desk. He'd spent 20 minutes reading through it, making notes in the margins with a fountain pen. Community property laws in Texas give her a right to half of marital assets, but some of these requests are aggressive. Such as, she wants the house free and clear, with you buying out her share at current market value. That means you'd need to refinance or come up with about $200,000 in cash. I don't have $200,000 in cash. Which means you'd have to sell. Convenient for her. He flipped a page. She also wants spousal maintenance for 3 years despite having a 6-figure job in pharmaceutical sales, and she wants this entire process completed within 90 days. She's in a hurry. Usually means someone's planning to remarry or move in with a new partner. They want a clean break before starting the new relationship publicly. Frank looked at me over his reading glasses. Is there someone else? There is. David Brennan, real estate developer. I know Brennan. Represented his ex-wife in their divorce about 6 years ago. Frank smiled. Not a nice smile. He's a piece of work. Tried to hide assets in offshore accounts. Claimed his company was worth half what it actually was. We had to drag him through forensic accounting for 18 months before he finally settled. So he's got a pattern. He's got a pattern. And your wife should be careful. Men like Brennan don't change their stripes. Frank closed the file. But that's her problem. Our problem is making sure you don't get screwed in this divorce. And to do that, we need to document everything. Such as? Bank statements, credit card records, anything that shows she was using marital funds inappropriately. Texas is a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity can still influence property division if we can demonstrate financial misconduct. I thought about the Cartier watch, the new wardrobe that had appeared in her closet over the last few months, the weekend trips she'd claimed were for work, but probably weren't. She spent a lot of money recently. Clothes, jewelry, restaurants I've never been to. Good. We document all of it. Show a pattern of spending marital assets on her affair. Frank leaned back in his expensive leather chair. But I'll be honest with you, Marcus. This is going to get ugly. Your wife has a decent lawyer. Walsh is competent, professional, but she plays by the rules. The question is, how dirty are you willing to get? As dirty as necessary. He smiled again. Good, because she started this war when she filed. We're just going to make sure we finish it on our terms. My retainer is $10,000. After that, we bill hourly. I wrote the check without hesitation. That night, I went through our bank statements for the past year. Riley had always handled our finances. She was better with money, she'd said. More organized, better at tracking expenses and planning budgets. What she'd actually been was strategic. $5,000 to Nordstrom over 6 months. $3,200 at restaurants I'd never been to. Upscale places downtown, the kind with tasting menus and wine pairings. $2,000 at a boutique hotel in Dallas during that conference she'd attended alone. The Cartier watch had been $8,300. I'd scrimped and saved, canceled subscriptions, brought lunch from home every day. She'd said she loved it, cried when she opened it, said it was the most thoughtful gift anyone had ever given her. She'd worn it on her first public date with David. I documented everything in a detailed spreadsheet. Date, vendor, amount, probable purpose. Cross-referenced with her work calendar to show which expenses couldn't possibly have been work-related. Highlighted hotel charges that coincided with trips she'd claimed were business travel, but for which I could find no corresponding work emails or conference registrations. By 2 a.m, I had a 47-page report showing exactly how my wife had spent 18 months systematically using our money to fund her exit strategy. I sent it to Frank with a note. Just the beginning. Then I did something that probably wasn't smart but felt necessary. I created a fake email account, used a VPN, registered through a service that didn't require identification. Completely untraceable. And I sent David Brennan a message. You should ask Riley about the money she's been spending. Might want to know what you're getting into. She's very good at spending other people's money. I didn't expect a response. Sent it and closed the laptop and went to bed. My phone buzzed at 2:30 a.m. Email notification. Who is this? I sat up, grabbed my laptop from the nightstand. Someone doing you a favor. Check your girlfriend's spending habits. $8,300 watch. $5,000 on clothes in 3 months. Weekend trips to hotels. All on her husband's dime while she was planning her exit. Is this Marcus? Does it matter? Ask yourself why a woman who claims to be unhappy in her marriage spent 18 months using marital funds to prepare for her next relationship instead of just leaving. Then decide if she's with you or your bank account. 3 minutes passed. Then, you're pathetic. Harassing me because you can't keep your wife happy. Maybe. But I'm not the one dating a woman who's already calculating her next upgrade. She left me for you. What makes you think you're the final stop? No response after that. I went to bed feeling pretty good about myself. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in systematic unraveling. David's 30-day project delay turned into a full environmental compliance investigation when someone, definitely not me, sent additional documents to the city's environmental compliance office. Turns out there were some questions about ground contamination that hadn't been adequately addressed in the original impact assessment. Historical records showed the site had been home to a dry cleaner in the 1970s, and soil testing from 20 years ago had indicated elevated levels of perchloroethylene. Nothing immediately dangerous, probably. The contamination was likely minimal, contained to specific areas, but enough to require months of additional testing, remediation planning, and environmental reporting before construction could resume. The local news loved it. Developer faces growing scrutiny over environmental concerns ran on KXAN. Questions mount about downtown project safety on KVUE. The Chronicle did a full investigative piece tracing the site's history and questioning why these issues hadn't been flagged earlier in the approval process. David's stock with the city council plummeted overnight. Council members who'd enthusiastically supported the project 6 months ago were now calling for thorough review and community input. Translation: they were covering their asses, distancing themselves from what was starting to look like a political liability. More delays meant more money hemorrhaging from David's company. Construction crews idling, equipment rentals piling up, investors getting nervous. I watched it happen from a comfortable distance, tracking everything online. David's company website got quieter. The blog that used to post weekly updates hadn't been touched in 3 weeks. The glossy Instagram posts slowed to a trickle. When photos did appear, David looked progressively more exhausted. Tie loose, eyes red, the confident smile replaced by something that looked more like grimacing. Riley, meanwhile, had entered full warfare mode. She'd shown up at the house, our house, on a Saturday morning with her lawyer in tow, demanding access to my files, said she needed documentation for the asset division. Jennifer Walsh stood on my front porch in a business suit on a weekend, looking annoyed. "Mr. Chen, we have a right to financial discovery. You're legally obligated to provide, and I will, through my attorney, following proper procedure." I'd already filed an injunction through Frank blocking Riley from removing anything without a complete inventory witnessed by both legal teams. Riley was furious. "Are you kidding me right now? These are my things." "Are they? Because I seem to remember buying most of what's in this house. But we'll let the lawyers sort it out." "You're being vindictive." She was screaming now, right there on the front porch where the neighbors could hear. "This is childish." "Talk to my lawyer." I started to close the door. "I don't even recognize you anymore." Her voice cracked. Actual emotion, maybe. Or just frustration that I wasn't playing by her rules. Good. That was the point. I closed the door, locked it, watched through the window as Jennifer Walsh put a hand on Riley's arm, steering her back toward their car. Riley was crying. Or maybe just really angry. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. They left, tires squealing on the asphalt. But the message I'd sent David had done something I hadn't quite anticipated. It had planted doubt, created a crack in their perfect relationship. I knew because Riley started texting me again. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. David said you contacted him. That's harassment. I could file a restraining order. I didn't contact anyone. You're paranoid. I know it was you, Marcus. Nobody else would know those details about our finances. Those details are in every bank statement. Your lawyer has them. My lawyer has them. You think I'm the only one who can read a credit card bill?" Silence for 2 hours. Then, "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Making this harder than it has to be. We could have been done by now, moved on. But you're dragging this out, turning it into some kind of war. I'm not making anything hard. I'm just not making it easy. There's a difference. Not to me." "Well, that's your problem, isn't it? You wanted out. You wanted excitement. You wanted to blow up our marriage and run off with someone else. Did you think I'd just smile and sign the papers?" Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "I loved you once. You know that, right? That one hit different." I stared at it for a long time, sitting in my empty house with Chinese takeout getting cold on the coffee table. "But not enough," I finally typed back. "That's not fair." "No, Riley, it's really not. None of this is fair. But here we are." She didn't text again that night. At work, I was functioning on pure autopilot, reviewing calculations, attending meetings, nodding at the right times. Travis kept asking if I was okay. I kept saying I was fine. I wasn't fine. I was focused. There's a difference. Kyle called me Wednesday night. "You see the news about Brennan?" "I might have seen something." Long pause. "Marcus, tell me you're not behind this." "I'm not behind anything. I just pointed some concerned citizens toward publicly available information. What they chose to do with it is their business." Jesus Christ. He sighed so loud I could hear it through the phone. You know this is going to blow back on you eventually, right? How? I haven't done anything illegal. Everything I've shared has been public record. I'm just an engaged citizen concerned about community development. You don't have to do something illegal for it to ruin your life. Ask me how I know. You literally created a revenge website and vandalized property. And I'm telling you, 2 years later, it wasn't worth it. I'm still rebuilding my reputation. People think I'm crazy, unstable. My own mother won't talk to me about my divorce because she's embarrassed. Do you care? Not as much as I should. But Marcus, you're different than me. You care what people think. You care about your reputation, your career. This crusade you're on, it's going to poison all of that. I'll risk it. You're making a mistake. Probably. But it's my mistake to make. He was quiet for a moment. Then, how much further are you planning to take this? As far as necessary. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. Well, when this all goes to shit, and it will go to shit, don't say I didn't warn you. He hung up, frustrated. Mad at me, maybe. Or mad at himself for not being able to talk me down. But he didn't understand. This wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about justice, about consequences, about making sure that people who destroyed lives didn't just skip away unscathed. Riley had spent 7 years taking everything I offered and deciding it wasn't enough. David had swooped in like some hero in a romantic comedy, ready to save her from her boring life with her boring husband. They deserved each other, and they deserved to see what happened when their perfect little fantasy collided with reality. Friday night, I drove past David's condo, 23rd floor of a glass tower downtown, probably $4,000 a month. His Tesla was in the parking garage. So was Riley's BMW, right next to it, playing house. I parked down the street and waited. They came out at 10, dressed for somewhere nice. David in a suit, Riley in another new dress, emerald green this time, probably cost $500. They looked happy, relaxed, like the investigation and the delays and the mounting legal bills didn't exist, like they were winning. They got in his car and drove off toward the warehouse district. I followed at a distance, 3 cars back, casual. They stopped at Uchiko, valet parking, one of the most expensive restaurants in Austin, probably $300 a person once you factored in drinks and the omakase menu. David's company was bleeding money, creditors circling, investors demanding answers, but he was still playing the part, still maintaining the illusion that everything was fine. I didn't go in, just sat in my truck across the street, watching through the large windows. I could see them at their table, laughing, touching hands across white tablecloth, the picture of a couple without a care in the world. My phone buzzed. Text from Frank. Good news. Judge granted our motion for complete financial discovery. Riley has to turn over all bank records, credit card statements, investment accounts, everything. Her lawyer filed an objection but got overruled. She's not happy. I smiled, watching Riley and David through that window. How not happy? Her lawyer called me some very creative names, accused us of using scorched earth tactics and trying to punish your wife. I told her we were simply protecting your interests and ensuring complete transparency and asset division. She didn't like that answer. When do we get the documents? She has 10 days to produce everything. If she doesn't comply, or if anything's missing, we can hold her in contempt. This is good for us, Marcus. Really good. I watched Riley take a sip of wine, probably $60 a glass. Watched David lean in close to say something that made her laugh. Thanks, Frank. You're worth every penny. Just doing my job. But Marcus, be careful. When people get desperate, they get stupid. Your wife strikes me as someone who doesn't like losing. She's not the only one. I sat there until they finished dinner, watching them pretend everything was perfect. They left around midnight, slightly unsteady on their feet. Too much wine. I followed them back to David's condo, watched them disappear into the building. Then I drove home and spent the rest of the night going through Riley's financial records, the ones Frank had already managed to subpoena from our joint accounts. It was damning. She'd been systematically moving money for months. Not huge amounts at once. That would have triggered my attention. But 500 here, 1,000 there. Transferring from our joint savings to a personal account I didn't even know she had. Taking cash advances on credit cards and claiming they were for household expenses. Over 18 months, she'd siphoned almost $40,000. $40,000 of our money, funding her exit strategy, funding her affair, funding her new life with David. If I could see it, a judge could too. By Sunday night, I had everything organized. A complete timeline of Riley's financial misconduct matched against her movements. Hotel receipts that coincided with text messages to David. Restaurant charges at places she'd told me she was having business dinners, but the amounts were too high for one person and fell on days when her work calendar showed no meetings. A jewelry purchase for $1,500. Earrings I'd never seen her wear, but that had appeared in one of David's Instagram posts from a charity gala. She'd been planning her exit for over a year, building her new life while pretending to maintain the old one. And I'd been too stupid, too trusting, too busy trying to be a good husband to notice. But now I was paying attention, and I wasn't going to stop until everyone understood exactly what she'd done. David's company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection on a Tuesday morning. It hit the business section before lunch. Brennan Development Group seeks bankruptcy protection amid project delays. The article detailed $7 million in outstanding debts, 3 stalled developments, and a liquidity crisis brought on by mounting legal fees and construction delays. I was in a meeting when my phone started buzzing with news alerts. Excused myself to the bathroom and read the article twice, making sure I understood all the implications. David wasn't broke. Not yet. Chapter 11 meant reorganization, not liquidation. He could theoretically survive this, restructure his debts, sell off some assets, emerge smaller, but intact. But the damage to his reputation was catastrophic. In real estate, reputation was currency, and David's was now toxic. Riley called me that afternoon. First time she'd actually called instead of texted in 3 weeks. "Are you happy now?" Her voice was raw, angry and scared in equal measure. "About what?" "Don't play dumb, Marcus. David's company is in bankruptcy because of you, because of those documents you sent, the investigations you triggered. His company is in bankruptcy because he over-leveraged himself trying to maintain a lifestyle he couldn't afford. That's not on me. Those documents you sent to the city, I didn't send anything to anybody, but it sounds like someone performed their civic duty by reporting potential safety concerns. That's how the system's supposed to work, Riley. You ruined him. No, he ruined himself by cutting corners and making bad business decisions. I just turned on some lights." Silence. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow, panic. "You're going to regret this," she finally said. "I doubt it. He's talking to lawyers, about defamation, about harassment. You sent him emails, Marcus, threatening emails. I haven't sent anyone anything. And even if someone did contact David, which I'm not saying happened, asking someone to examine their partner's spending habits isn't a threat, it's advice. You're destroying our lives." "Our lives? You and David aren't my concern, Riley. My concern is making sure I don't get screwed in this divorce. Everything else is just consequences. What happened to you? You were never this cruel." "I learned from the best." She hung up hard enough that I heard the clatter of her phone hitting something. Frank called 10 minutes later. "Got an interesting call from opposing counsel. They want to settle." "Already?" "Your wife's getting nervous. The financial discovery is very bad for her. We can prove systematic misappropriation of marital funds, and now her boyfriend's company is circling the drain, which means her backup plan is evaporating. She wants this done before things get worse. What are they offering? 60-40 split of marital assets in her favor. You keep the house, but buy her out at current market value, minus her debt obligations. No spousal maintenance. That's significantly better than her original demand. But still not fair. We can push for 50-50, maybe even better given her documented financial misconduct. The cash advances alone could be construed as dissipation of marital assets, which Texas courts take seriously. How long would that take? Could be months, maybe 6 to 8 if it goes to a contested hearing. Could be over a year if it goes to full trial and she appeals. I thought about it. About dragging this out, making Riley squirm, watching her perfect new life crumble piece by piece while we fought over every dollar. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. But revenge wasn't about prolonging pain. It was about delivering it precisely, decisively, then moving on. Counter at 50-50, I said. Equal division of all marital assets. She gets half the house equity, but I keep the full retirement accounts since she's been spending marital funds inappropriately. That's more than fair. She won't like it. She doesn't have to like it. She just has to accept that her affair and financial misconduct have consequences. I can work with that. Anything else? Yeah. Make sure her lawyer knows exactly why we're taking this position. I want Riley to understand that every dollar she spent on David, every lie she told, every hotel room, all of it has a price. Marcus, Frank's voice got serious. I need to tell you something as your attorney and frankly, as someone who's been doing this for 30 years. What you're doing, it's legal, it's justifiable, but it's also corrosive. I've seen people win their divorce and lose themselves in the process. Is that your professional opinion? That's my observation. You came to me 6 weeks ago as a decent guy who'd been betrayed. Now you're someone who's systematically destroying 2 people's lives. That changes you, makes you harder, and not always in a good way. I'll take my chances. All right, your call. I'll send the counteroffer today. That evening, I finally packed up Riley's remaining things. Clothes she'd left behind, mostly older stuff she didn't want anymore. Toiletries in the bathroom, books she'd never read, still pristine on the shelf with uncracked spines. Photos from our wedding that she hadn't cared enough to take. I put everything in boxes, labeled them neatly, stacked them by the garage door. Then I changed the locks, called a locksmith, paid extra for same-day service, new deadbolt, new handle, new keys that Riley's copies wouldn't open. My phone rang at 9. Riley, of course. My key doesn't work. I know, I changed the locks. You can't do that! That's illegal! Actually, it's not. It's my house, until the divorce is final, and the judge's order says you can retrieve your belongings with 24 hours written notice. You didn't give notice. My stuff is sitting outside, in clearly labeled weather-resistant boxes. You're welcome to collect them anytime. Marcus. 24 hours, Riley. That's the rule. See you tomorrow. I hung up. She tried calling back 4 times, sent a flurry of increasingly angry texts. I didn't respond to any of them. At midnight, I heard a car in the driveway. Then heavy footsteps on the porch. Then banging, hard, angry strikes against my new door. Open this door, Marcus! Riley's voice, shrill with fury. I looked through the peephole. Riley and David, both of them red-faced and furious. David was still in his suit, tie pulled loose. He looked like he'd been drinking. Not your house, I called through the door. Go away. I will call the police, David said, his first words directly to me. His voice was thick, slurred slightly, definitely drunk. You can't keep her property. Her property is in boxes by the garage. She can take them any time. What I won't do is let you both barge into my home at midnight making demands. Now get off my property before I call the police for trespassing. You son of a... David lunged toward the door. Riley grabbed his arm. David, don't. Please. Let's just go. He's destroying everything. David's voice cracked. The confident, smooth developer was gone. This was someone unraveling. My company, my reputation, everything I built. You destroyed your own company, I called through the door. By over-leveraging and cutting corners and trying to maintain a lifestyle you couldn't afford. I just made sure people were asking the right questions. I will sue you. I will take everything you have. For what? Submitting public documents to city officials? Exercising my First Amendment rights? Good luck with that. Your lawyers will love billing you for a case they can't win. Marcus, please, Riley said. Her voice was different now, smaller, scared. Can we just talk, face to face? There's nothing to talk about. Your lawyer and my lawyer can handle everything from here. David's lost everything, his company, his savings. We can't afford… She stopped, realizing what she'd just admitted. Can't afford what, Riley? Can't afford to keep playing house in his expensive condo? Can't afford first-class trips to Cabo? Can't afford the lifestyle you left me for? Silence. That's what I thought. Maybe you should have done some due diligence before trading up. I hate you, Riley whispered. No, you don't. You hate that I'm not playing the role you assigned me. I was supposed to be the loser ex-husband who quietly disappeared while you rode off into the sunset. Sorry to disappoint. David lunged at the door again. The whole frame shook. Riley screamed at him to stop. I'm calling the police now, I said calmly. You have 30 seconds to leave before I report 2 people attempting to force entry into my home. I'm sure the news would love that story. Bankrupt developer arrested for domestic disturbance. Great press. They argued in low, fierce whispers. Then footsteps retreating, car doors slamming, engines starting too loud, tires squealing as David tore out of the driveway. I watched through the window until the taillights disappeared. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from the sheer electric thrill of watching them panic, watching their perfect plans disintegrate. This was what power felt like. I slept better that night than I had in months. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in October, exactly 7 months after I found that photograph. 7 months from that first moment of cold clarity to this one, standing in a courthouse conference room while lawyers shuffled papers and Riley refused to look at me. The room smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Everything was beige, formal, and completely devoid of warmth, as befits the end of a marriage. The final settlement. 50-50 split of marital assets. I kept the house. Riley got her half of the equity in cash, $173,000 minus legal fees. We split the retirement accounts evenly. No spousal maintenance. Clean break. It was fair, technically. But fair wasn't the same as winning. Riley had to sell her Cartier watch to help cover her half of the legal fees. David's bankruptcy had gone through. He'd lost the downtown project, the Round Rock development, and 2 other properties. His company still existed as a legal entity, barely, but his reputation was destroyed. No bank would finance him. No investor would touch him. And Riley, who'd left me for excitement and adventure and a life of luxury, was moving back in with her parents at 34 years old. I'd heard it through Travis, who'd heard it from his wife, who'd heard it from Riley's sister. The grapevine in Austin's professional class was efficient and merciless. Ready to sign? Frank asked. He looked tired. 7 months of contentious divorce would do that. I picked up the pen. It was heavier than it should have been. Riley finally looked at me then. Her eyes were red-rimmed, puffy. She'd lost weight. Her suit hung loose on her frame. The confident, ambitious woman who'd told me I was too boring had been replaced by someone hollowed out and fragile. I hope you're happy, she said quietly. I'm not, but I'm satisfied. What's the difference? Happy is getting what you want. Satisfied is making sure you get what you deserve. Her lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, looking equally exhausted, cleared her throat. If we could just finish the signatures. We signed. Initialed where indicated. Dated. turned pages while lawyers explained clauses neither of us cared about anymore. The mechanical process of legally dissolving 7 years of shared life. When it was done, Jennifer gathered her copies and headed for the door, heels clicking on linoleum. Riley stood slowly, like someone much older than 34. "I'm sorry," she said. I looked up from organizing my copies. For what? For all of it. For hurting you. For being cruel. For thinking I wanted something different when what I really needed was therapy and honesty. Her voice was flat. Rehearsed, maybe. I thought I wanted excitement, but I was wrong. About everything. Yeah, you were. I loved you. I need you to know that. At the beginning, I really did love you. But not at the end. No, not at the end. I don't know when it stopped, but somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as a partner and started seeing you as an obstacle. That's on me. Yes, it is. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I guess I deserved that. You deserve a lot of things, Riley. That's barely scratching the surface. Right. She picked up her purse. Her hands were shaking slightly. Well, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope destroying us made you feel better. It didn't, but it made sure you understood that actions have consequences. She walked out without another word. Frank started packing his briefcase, sorting papers into folders with practiced efficiency. That was cold, Marcus. She earned it. I'm not arguing, but what you did to that guy, to Brennan, to his business, it was legal, technically, but it was ruthless. You know that, right? He shouldn't have touched my wife. She wasn't really your wife anymore when she touched him. Not emotionally, anyway. You know that, too. I didn't answer. Frank closed his briefcase with a decisive click. I've been doing this for 33 years. I've seen hundreds of divorces, every kind you can imagine. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that the people who come out okay are the ones who can let go. Move on. The ones who can't, who hold on to anger and need for revenge, they win the divorce, but lose something else. Something important. Thanks for the psychology session. Send me your final bill. Already did. Paid in full as of this morning. He extended his hand. Good luck, Marcus. I mean that. I hope you figure out how to be happy. We shook. He left. I sat alone in that conference room for 20 minutes, looking at my copy of the divorce decree. 7 years reduced to 48 pages of legal language. Our entire marriage, the good times, the bad times, the slow erosion of love into resentment, summarized in whereases and party of the first parts. My phone buzzed. Text from Kyle. Heard it's done. You okay? Yeah, it's over. Want to grab a beer? Rain check. Got something to do first. I drove to David's office building. The Brennan Development Group sign was still up, but most of the lights were off. Bankruptcy had not yet destroyed the company, but it was on life support. A few months ago, this building had represented everything Riley wanted. Success, ambition, the promise of a bigger, better life. Now it was just a half-empty office tower with a failing company and broken dreams. I didn't go inside, just sat in my truck across the street, watching. At 6:30, David came out. He looked like hell. Suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Tie loose. Hair uncombed. The cocky swagger from his Instagram posts had been replaced by the shuffle of someone defeated. He got in his Tesla, one of the few assets he'd managed to protect through bankruptcy, and drove north. I followed him. Not to his downtown condo. He'd lost that, I'd learned. Couldn't make the lease payments. Instead, he drove to one of those apartment complexes off I-35. The kind with a fitness center nobody uses and a pool that's always slightly green. The kind where people go when they're rebuilding their lives from rubble. He parked in front of a ground-floor unit, sat in his car for 5 minutes before getting out, like he needed to steel himself just to go inside. I pulled up next to him. He recognized my truck immediately. His whole body tensed, hand moving toward his door handle like he was considering running. I rolled down my window. Marcus. His voice was flat, exhausted, all the fight gone. David. Come to gloat? No. Come to finish this. What's left to finish? You won. You destroyed my company, ruined my reputation, took everything I built and burned it down. Congratulations. I didn't destroy your company. You did that yourself with poor business decisions and over-leverage. I just made sure people were asking the right questions. Those documents you sent to the city were public record. Anyone could have found them. I just made sure the right people were looking. I paused. You want to know something funny? I didn't have to work that hard. Your company was already a house of cards. I just gave it a push. He looked at me with something like hatred. But there was exhaustion there too. Why? What did I ever do to you besides fall for someone who was already leaving? You slept with my wife. She wasn't happy with you. She told me that from the beginning. Said she'd been unhappy for years. Maybe she was. But you didn't care about that. You saw an opportunity, a married woman with money problems and a boring husband, and you took it. Didn't care what you destroyed. I didn't destroy your marriage, Marcus. You were just too blind to see it. That stung because it was probably true. You're right, I said. My marriage was failing long before you showed up. But you made it worse. You helped her lie to me for months. You encouraged her to steal from our joint accounts to fund your dates. You posted photos of her on social media while she was still wearing the jewelry I bought her. He slumped against his car. I know, and I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I really am. I was an asshole. I saw what I wanted and I took it without thinking about consequences. Just like I did with my business. At least you're finally being honest. What choice do I have? I've lost everything. My company's gone. My reputation's destroyed. Riley left me last week. Said she couldn't handle being with someone who was failing. Guess she has a type. He laughed, bitter. You know what's funny? She's already on dating apps. Saw her profile yesterday. Looking for her next upgrade. I didn't know what to say to that. You destroyed us both, David continued. And for what? Does it make you feel better? Does my misery balance out your pain? I thought about that. About Riley's face in the courthouse. About the photograph on the kitchen counter. About 7 years of trying to be enough for someone who'd already decided I wasn't. I don't feel better, I admitted, but I feel done. And that's something. Is it? It has to be. We sat there in silence for a moment. Two men who'd destroyed each other over a woman who'd left both of us. Stay away from Riley, I said finally. Stay away from me. Rebuild your life somewhere else. Houston, Dallas, anywhere but here. Or what? You'll find more documents? Start more investigations? I won't have to. You barely survived one investigation, David. Your reputation can't take another hit. And I have 3 more folders full of interesting things about your business practices. Things I haven't shared yet. His jaw clenched. You're a psychopath. No, I'm just thorough. Something you should have been with your building permits and environmental assessments. I drove away, leaving him standing there in the parking lot of his cheap apartment complex next to his Tesla that probably cost more than a year's rent.